Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to TETHRDNation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to TETHRDNation.com. If you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Welcome to the Truths from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Spartan Forge. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 295. Today, we're talking with Jace Allen about killing bucks in October in his 3-buck season, so stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine and prepping, making your final preparations. I say final preparations because I'm getting my season kicked off here. I think it's T- from today. I think it's 28 days until I fly to Idaho. So, man, it is coming up super quick. What the bummer was, I guess a couple weeks ago, I had mentioned, I had sustained an injury and had been kind of coming back from that. And prior to that, I was making some really good progress, getting some rucking in, packing around some weight, and was feeling pretty good, getting, as far as my legs were concerned and stuff like that. My cardio really comes from the jiu-jitsu, live rolling and stuff like that. I get plenty of cardio from that, but kind of getting the legs, ready to roll, was doing some rucking, and I was really I had a nice pace, I guess we should say, where I wasn't killing myself, but I felt like I was making really good progress, and by the time I was getting ready to leave, I would have been good to go. But injury set in, had a little bit of a setback, and so finally today I got up. I've been doing some light rucking, like around the house and stuff like that. Not a lot of elevation changes, me basically making sure I wasn't going to re-injure my ribs by carrying around a bunch of weight. And so today was actually the first time getting back to being in the woods, taking on some elevation, hiking through the woods, stepping over logs, uneven terrain, getting those, those small ankle and foot muscles that you really don't ever use unless you're in the woods, using uneven terrain. So I was doing that today, put a couple miles in with a 50-pound ruck. So felt really good. Legs felt good. Didn't feel like I lost a whole lot. So got another 4 weeks to kind of finalize everything and make sure that I'm tip top and ready to go. But with that, we're not going to belabor this up front today. Do have one thing to pass on to you guys that I want giveaway announcement. So we're going to do a giveaway. I don't very often do these. Probably don't do these often enough. But you guys are super rad, and I appreciate the fact that you guys have been listening to this podcast for as many years as you have. We're going into year number 7, I think, and I don't usually make a big deal. I think the anniversary was the beginning of June. I usually don't make a big deal about these things, but want to make sure that I show my appreciation for the fact that you guys kind of stick with me through all these years and all these different episodes. So we're going to do a tethered giveaway, and I want to look at my text message just to make sure that I know exactly what we're going to be giving away. So here's the plan. We are going to do a Menace saddle and all the ropes and carabiners to one lucky winner. So you'll have essentially a saddle kit set up that you'll be able to, have all your ropes, carabiners, and be able to go hunt this year using a saddle. So in order to get in for the drawing to win this, only going to ask you to do one thing. Head to iTunes and leave a rating. So you're actually going to have to leave a rating. So you're going to have to actually type in a comment like Clint's awesome, or this show sucks, or whatever it is. But going to need to ask you to leave a rating and a response in iTunes. It'd be awesome if it was 5 stars. It'd be super helpful for me. But whenever you do that, make sure the name that is going to show up in the rating that you leave is the same name or a searchable name that I can use to find you on Instagram, so I can announce the winner, draw a winner at random, and then be able to get a hold of you on Instagram to make sure to let you know that you've won. If you use Joe Mama 123 and your name is Frank Rizzo, and I look up Joe Mama 123 on Instagram and it's not there, it doesn't come up as Frank Rizzo, you lose. You're not going to get the tethered kit. So make sure whatever name you use, go to iTunes, leave your rating, make sure the name that you use for that is searchable in Instagram, and I will get a hold of you and send you along a tethered kit to get you started along your saddle endeavor. So with that, one more thing, just really quick. I know I'd mentioned in the past, you guys, our buddies Exodus have the Velvet Fest thing going on right now, which is kind of their official kind of start of the deer season. They help you get you rolling with all your scouting by getting your cameras out in the timber and making sure that you're kind of picking up all those velvet bucks. So now through August 19th, they'll have some killer prizes for anyone who uses the hashtag Velvet Fest. And social media, sharing, your whitetail experiences, tagging any of the velvet inventory that you have. Also, if you're in the market for a trail camera, Velvet Fest is the perfect opportunity to get ready for the season. They're going to be sending out exclusive savings in their email newsletter throughout this campaign, so make sure you head over to ExodusOutdoorGear.com and sign up for that to make sure you get all those opportunities. But to get things started, they're doing a 20% savings on any multiple Exodus render or render bundle for the first 100 orders. Use the code VelvetFest to lock in these awesome summer savings. Every single camera order comes with a random prize card. I've been told that those include some pretty kick-ass things, including the MMT tailored arrows that they just recently launched this summer. So over the last 7 years, you guys know I've been using the Exodus trail cameras because they just flat out work. Best trail camera warranty period, and every single camera is backed with a 5-year warranty that even comes with a theft and damage policy. That's right, half a decade and you're covered by the Exodus 5-year warranty, but you probably won't need it because their cameras are already built to last. I've got a bunch in the timber. They've been running since the inception, since the first year I started working with these guys. As I mentioned, they also launched the Exodus MMT arrow this summer. It's a tailored arrow built to your specific specifications using nothing but the best components. Head to their website and use their 3D builder and experience the best shooting hunting arrows available. I was actually just out flinging some arrows, getting ready for my Idaho hunt and dropping bombs from 53 yards in the backyard. So be sure to take part in Velvet Fest celebration and tag your social channel or tag the Exodus channel because they're going to want to check out what you guys have going on this summer. So with that, today's episode, we are talking with Jace Allen. Jace is from Missouri and had a hell of a season last year. Killed 3 hammer bucks, 2 in Missouri, and then 1 late season on public in Illinois. The thing is Jace is he's a younger fella. When I say younger fella, I'm younger than me, but he just gets it, man. He's laying down hammers on the regular. He has a very mobile kind of approach to the way he hunts, as I'm sure a lot of you do. A lot of people who listen to the show, that's kind of our style. But he also has kind of a laid back kind of approach to where he does a lot of observing from kind of afar, and he'll pick kind of quadrants apart in an area and kind of go in and kind of try to extract a deer, for a specific deer that he's looking for from an area. A lot of this stuff for him happens in the month of October, where he can kind of make a plan, work a plan on a deer without starting to get to that phase of not quite sure what these deer might be doing when rut kind of rolls along. So awesome conversation with Jace. Actually, as we were talking, he was in Colorado for his birthday, glassing up some elk and some mulleys. So happy birthday to him. And we'll go ahead and jump into the show. And as always, I want to thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I have on a fella from the Midwest. I learned of this guy from checking some stuff out online, and he has some mutual friends. I guess we have some mutual friends. And I just kind of started scrolling through some stuff and was watching his approach, and he's a grinder, gets after it. And had a hell of a year last year. And I was like, man, I got to have this dude on. I have none other than Mr. Jace Allen. What's going on, man?
What's up, man?
I'm doing good, man. I just wrapped up another day at work in the salt mines and looking forward to talking a little bit of deer about you. Also excited that hunting season seems to be drawing closer, man. So pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, man, it is. It's getting close. It's just right here around the corner.
That's right, man. So, hey, before we get started, dude, happy birthday. I think you have a birthday right about now, don't you? Or close to it?
Yeah, it was. I don't even know what day of the week it is, but it was Friday. Friday
Nice.
was my birthday. I'm 27 years old, getting up there, man.
Yeah, getting up there, about ready to start having to take your Geritol and doing all that kind of stuff, stretching into the morning when you
Right.
get when you get out of bed. Nice. So did you take a trip out west for your birthday? I saw you had some on Instagram you were showing some glassing up some bulls and stuff. Where are you at right now?
Well, right now I am sitting by Grand Lake here in Colorado. I'm staring up at the mountains, but yeah, that's usually what I like to do on my birthday, other than deer stuff. Is I like to come out west and get up to some higher elevation and glass some bulls and some mule deer bucks and catch some trout, and we've been doing that. It's been fun here the last couple days. I got a couple more days here left. Hopefully I can catch some bigger fish, but we'll see.
Man, that sounds like a pretty good birthday to me, man. A little trouting, a little bulling, a little muleying. Sounds pretty good.
Yes, sir. Doing it right.
Nice. Are you headed out west this fall? Or
I am not. I think the furthest west I might go is Nebraska for whitetails.
okay.
Not planning on doing any like Western big game hunting this year.
No.
I have once before in the past, but I'm gonna try to zone in on the whitetails here this year.
Yeah, it's I made a trip west it's several years ago and it was great. It was awesome. But I hadn't had a chance to get back out since for just whatever reason. I mean, it became a little harder. The place I was going in Montana, where I have a buddy of mine, it was no longer a really easy kind of over the counter tag to get any longer,
Right.
which made it a little bit more challenging. I ended up by kind of luck this year drawing Idaho. That was just a lottery, and I just happened to get in line and where I wanted to go. I have a buddy, and his area usually isn't super sought after, so I was able to get a tag, and so I'm headed out there in a couple weeks. So not gonna lie, man, I saw you posting some velvet bulls, and I might have got a little jacked up.
Yeah, it's actually I've got a couple people jacked up. They're like, "Oh man, you're gonna go hunt elk this fall?" It's like, "No, I'm just looking.
Yeah, just window shopping,
I just window shopping."
right? Yeah, my buddy who lives in Idaho, he was actually just out this past weekend. It's always nice when you have a buddy that lives in the area because he's kind of out scouting, spending time in the woods. He's hung some trail campers and stuff like that. And it's nice for us flatlanders that are headed out west when we can't be out there all the time.
Right.
Kind of do the dirty work. So it's always nice to have a good friend that's willing to do that, and kind of help get you, at least help set the crew up. It's just him and I, so it's just the two of us. At least
Right.
that set us up for hopefully being in bulls, or at least in elk,
Right.
you know what I mean? Hearing some bugling and being able to do some chasing. But there was one from last year that he saw. So last year was the first year he lived out there, so he couldn't hunt because he was a non-resident. And so
Gotcha.
he just spent a lot of time in the timber, just going along, calling for people, tagging along with people and stuff like that. And he would go out on his own every so often just to kind of just watch, kind of, I guess. And it was funny because I was talking to him. He said he learned a lot more last year about hunting, not carrying a weapon and just being an observer than he had probably in any one year that he's carried a weapon, if you can believe that.
I love that because that's going to be one of my points to this last season that I had.
Yeah.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah. He just said like his growth of just like being able to spend a whole year observing without the pressure of having to release an arrow or fire a bullet or whatever the case was just, he's like, I would have never thought it, if someone would have told me that. He's like, but because I had to go through it, he was like, it just, he's like, I feel like I upped my game. And so anyway, long story short is he went in and actually found a bull, or a couple bulls, and one really nice one last year that he actually tried to get his buddy on, and he couldn't get a shot. And It's this particular area that he thought that they were bedded in there, and I think he found some beds and stuff like that. And so when he knew I was coming out, he was going to hunt there regardless whether I was coming out or not. And he was just kind of like, man, I know that bull's still in there. I'm going to try to see if I can find where he's at over the summer. Because if he's in there, he was big last year. This year, he's going to be a hammer. Right. So, he hung some trail cameras and stuff like that. And this past weekend, he finally went back in there to that area because he was just doing some scouting, seeing what things were looking like. He had a couple more cameras that he wanted to hang. And wouldn't you know it, he got right in and around that bedding area. And guess who he saw? The hammer. And he said he was like, dude, he's big. He's like, I'm not an elk expert. He was like, but that's a big elk. So,
right.
So, yeah. So we have a spot not too far from there that we're actually setting up our spike camp. We'll kind of circle around, and come up the backside of the opposite ridge and kind of be able to camp kind of up above one of the drainages that bull's using. So we're going to be close, and we should be able to hear bugling from the spot where we're going to camp, so we can kind of make a play in the morning because we're kind of on top of this ridge in between a couple different drainages. So, So that's the plan, man. If you can't tell, I'm jacked.
You sound like it, man. It sounds like you got the sickness.
Dude, I do. It's like I finally got all my gear. It's like I'm ready to go. It's like I'm counting down the days. But
yeah.
Man, before I get off on more elk tangents, dude, for the guy or for the people out there listening that maybe don't know who you are or haven't followed along with you, if you wouldn't mind, just give everyone a little bit of a Cliff Notes version about who you are, where you're from, what you do for a living, and things of that nature.
Sure. So my name is Jace Allen. I'm originally from Bonne Terre, Missouri. I'm 27 years old as of a couple days ago. As far as what I do for a living, that's kind of interesting right now because I'm kind of in between a couple things because I had the old 9-to-5 job, and I really, really wanted to put forth the time into whitetails, or as much as I want to. And so I left that 9-to-5 job, and it's kind of left me in an odd spot here. As far as what exactly I do for a living, but I'm just kind of figuring out, man. I mean, my main goal is I want to be out there, hunting whitetails as much as I can. Let's see, growing up, I hunted in a little more like hill country, like the Missouri Ozarks, is where I grew up hunting. Pretty fortunate. It was a pretty big piece of private land that I was able to hunt. The guy, he ran cows there as well, but that's kind of where I cut my teeth on hunting, was in some hill country, hunting some acorn fed deer, hunting with my dad and my brother during that time.
Right. I was going to ask, man, like how did you get started? It sounds like you were kind of in a family. You're just kind of born into hunting. And was it kind of just a natural progression to pick up a bow, or was there like a moment where you were like, I'm going to bow hunt?
Well, it was always both. So we, like, my dad growing up, we'd always have the deer camp during, Missouri's rifle season, but we'd get up there and get after it with a bow as well. Sorry, can you rephrase your question?
Yeah, sure. So how did you start hunting? Because I know a lot of folks, for me, for example, in Pennsylvania, it's a big hunting heritage state, right? So, I start off with my dad, shooting all kinds of squirrels. And I was a terror on blackbirds with my BB gun when I was a kid. It was just kind of my growing up hunting was a very kind of classic Pennsylvania 12-year-old boy who's going to get into hunting. That was kind of my, how I was brought up in it. There wasn't ever a question. It was like, when you're old enough to, you're going to be doing it. It wasn't like whether or not I had an interest in it or not. It was just kind of a birthright to a degree.
Right. My dad didn't really press me, super hard to go out, but, he always left it up to me to decide whether I wanted to go out. And I never said no. Even like before I couldn't walk, like I would go out, in the field with my dad, and he'd just carry me on his shoulders.
Right.
So that's kind of how I got my start in hunting. And I hunted with my dad up until I was 15 years old, and then he kind of set me out on my own. There was a couple years there where I was transitioning, from high school into college. I still hunted during that time, kind of had some, other interests, intermingled there. But it was, let's see, it was like 2017. I was, or maybe earlier than that. I went out and I started hunting new public land, properties on my own for the first time. Sure.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about that a little bit, because I'm always curious what the reason that people kind of seek out the public experience, if you will, right? Because it's very in vogue now, right?
Right.
And I think sometimes, I don't want to say it gets a bad rap. Like in Pennsylvania, it gets a bad rap because people say there's no deer on public land, which isn't true. But it also has like this bad kind of hipster rap now, if you will, in the hunting community, right? Because a lot of folks are doing it. And so I'm always interested in what kind of, compelled someone to, to jump into public. My rationale was, our family property was 3+ hours from my house. And if I wanted to hunt as often as I wanted to hunt, then I had to strike out on public. And if I wanted to not be limited by property lines in the same way that I would be limited on, the family farm or whatever, that I needed to go out on public. And that was kind of my rationale. So I'm just curious what yours was.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of along the same lines. I mean, I'd moved away a couple hours from home, and so that property that I grew up hunting, it was hours away, somewhere where I couldn't, hunt it efficiently anymore anyways.
Right.
So I started there, and I just started going out, and all I had was myself, I had a recurve and, quiver full of arrows. And that's how I got my start in public land hunting.
Man, there's no harder way than that, dude. Like, I'm going out on my own, trying to figure this thing out, and I got a recurve with a quiver full of arrows. It's like, so how successful were you with the recurve early on?
Not at all, dude. There were so many freaking deer that I missed. And I mean, you take, so like the whole recurve thing, like you go from hunting in the Missouri Ozarks where I was hunting, and usually whenever you have a deer come in, you're dealing with a single deer. And then you move to where I moved, which has a higher deer population, and all of a sudden you're hunting off the ground and you have to beat multiple deer before it's the deer that you want to shoot. I mean, that just made things so much harder. And then you had to actually hit them, which I was really bad at.
Nice. Yeah. It's that whole hunting from the ground bit, man. It's hard, but I would have to imagine, man, that there was a lot of really valuable lessons during that time where it seemed like you were screwing up hunt after hunt. Like, I got to imagine there was a lot of things that you took away from those particular hunts.
Well, it was kind of what you were talking about earlier with your buddy that was, up in Idaho, and he spent just a whole year out there scouting. Because I wasn't very successful, I spent a ton of time out in the woods. And because things are so particular, whenever you're up close and, personal to these animals on the ground, I really, really had a good feel of kind of like the, when to move, when not to move. What's how close is too close, how to get close to animals.
Right.
I would not take those. There was 3 years that I hunted with a recurve. I would not take those years back for anything, because honestly, I spent a ton of time out in the woods and I learned a bunch during that time. Right.
Yeah. It's the old saying, man. It's like, there's only one way to get good at anything, and it's just to continually do it. Right. And I think a lot of times, we look for this piece of gear or, this, whatever it is, gadget, and think that all of a sudden we're going to see our success rate increase. And the reality is that it's just, time in tree or time, in observation, time in country, that's really, really what it comes down to. So, so when you moved away, you got your recurve in hand, you're venturing out on this public and stuff like that. And I'm not sure, do you live close to that area now, or have you changed areas completely again?
Nope, I am still right there.
Still right in that general area. So what's that terrain look like? Because I know you mentioned, growing up, it was more like the Ozarks and hill country and stuff like that, low deer density. And so where you live now, what does the terrain look like that you're usually hunting?
Man, you can get into anything you want to. Around me, there's wide open river bottoms, cottonwood trees. There's the same kind of hill country that I was, hunting back home. There's hill country and crops mixed in, on different properties. And then there's, there's old strip pit mines that are just absolutely riddled with autumn olive. You can't even see 5 feet in front of your face. So it's whatever you want to get into in the area that I've kind of settled into. And I think that's why I really, really like it.
Right. Do you have a preference of one over the other, or do you find, I don't want to say one easier than the other to hunt, but I guess let me just ask it this way. Do you prefer one over the other, or do you find yourself gravitating to one type of kind of terrain or, environment than the other?
Kind of not really. I mean, the hills is, where I grew up. That's where I feel, comfortable. I understand the wind, how all that works in there. I guess it would depend on the time of the year, for me.
Right.
So like,
yeah, I was just gonna ask you to explain that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if I'm looking at like early season, I'm looking at, a percentage, basis of, how easy is it to get sorry, words are hard, man.
Yeah, they are, man. I get you, man. They're usually hard for me too.
Right. So like if I were to try to go to the hills, close by where I live, if I were to go in there in September, I would feel less confident that I'm going to find a buck on an early season pattern rather than if I go somewhere and I have a soybean field. The crops makes things very, very easy because it's like, okay, I know where this deer is feeding, most likely. And that's, a lot of the battle. If I go to the hills in the early season, I'm like, and I don't know this for sure, but it's just like, okay, there's a million white oak trees out here and I need to find the one that he's feeding on. If you can do that, great. But it's not as efficient in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. 'Cause that's a lot of what I'm typically up against around me locally, or even whenever I travel to northern PA. It's a lot of big woods with not a lot of agriculture around. I mean, there'll be, I might have one or two spots where I've got a little bit of ag. And when I say a little bit of ag, it might be, close to a mile away as the crow flies, or, roughly from a corner of a public piece that I can hunt, like a back corner of a public piece that I can hunt. And that would be about the closest. And you're right. I mean, it's, I have to kind of rely on a lot of times, I guess I'm a little bit fortunate to where my season comes in mid-September. So if I can find something that's consistently, let's say, hitting a camera, like the week prior and it's and he's daylighting or something like that. And, and the season comes in, I usually know that I'll maybe have like a week before he transitions.
Right.
And then after that, it's it's exactly what you said, which is, all right, well, where's the white oak that's dropping? Oh, there's 100 of them. Cool.
Right.
So where are the deer at? And then it becomes, as whack-a-mole of just scouting and trying to find where the sign's laid down in relationship to where the hot food source might be.
Right. For sure.
Yeah. So, growing up in the hills, and transitioning to where you live now, to where, you just kind of have a bunch of everything, essentially. How would you kind of, I guess, describe your hunting style? I mean, do you feel like are you super aggressive? Are you not aggressive and you kind of nip away at the edges to start, or, what does that look like whenever hunting season starts for you? Are you, if you know of something, that's living somewhere, are you all in, one sit and I'm going to try to kill him, or do you kind of play the cool game?
Well, it's kind of interesting. So I guess I'll preface it with, I mean, I have to, like, whenever season comes around, like, there's a certain amount of information that you need, like, in order to make an aggressive move, on a deer. And in Missouri on MDC land, state land, we can't use trail cameras.
Right.
And I never did use trail cameras growing up. So let's see, I'll back up like 2 seasons to kind of answer that question. So in like a 365 day year whitetail guy, I'm not saying I'm that guy, but like going out and spring scouting, let's say I run across there's a bunch of like big hammered beds, and I'm just like, oh man, I've really got it found here. I know exactly what I'm gonna do, and I'm looking at the sign, I'm like, yeah, he's probably here in September. Cool. I'm gonna get in here, September the 15th and, kill him. That went horribly for me the first year that I tried it. So I guess you could say my style, last year changed to, I'm still going to do all that spring scouting, but whenever season starts, I am going to go and very aggressively scout a lot of the areas that looked good. Now, whether that be glassing from a distance, or boots on the ground, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get that information that I need in order to make an aggressive move. And then beyond that, like, I'm not really one to, pick around at the edges and stuff. If I see something, I'm going to pounce, even if it's a situation like this buck I killed last September, even if it's something like that, where the first time I'm in, that's the only chance I'm going to get. And then those deer in that area are gone. I'm fine with that.
Right.
But it's getting. See, I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here.
That's all right. Yeah. So it sounds like your approach now has changed slightly to where you're going in, instead of that first hunt necessarily, you're going in and validating what you saw in your spring scouting to kind of confirm, like, let's say, for example, as a scenario, you go in and you spring scout, like you'd mentioned, you say, hey, I see this sign. This looks good. I like it. It looks like it's September sign. Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to come in and make an aggressive move and try to kill that thing right at the beginning of September, I'm going to come in, I'm going to scout this area, knowing full well that I'm going to lay down some scent and whatever, but I need to come in here and make sure that this spot is what I thought it was whenever I was spring scouting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Okay. And then from there, you're like, all right, now I'm ready. If I get one crack, I get one crack, and that's just, it is what it is. But now I know that this is the spot this is the spot within the spot. That if it's going to happen here, it's going to happen at this spot.
Right. I mean, it's, keeping as close to, being relevant with your information as you can. Trail cameras, they do that. They give you very relevant information. And hunting on, and I'm saying this because I did this for a whole season, hunting on information that is, 8 months old or whatever, is basically, to me, it's completely irrelevant information.
Yeah, I mean, it's outdated at that point. It's a nice piece to have, just to kind of know, it's I guess, how do I say it? It's a part of the puzzle, but it's certainly not the biggest piece of the puzzle, I guess, is one way to say it.
Right.
So I'm curious, man, when you find these pieces of public or whatever, and say it's a new piece to you or whatever, how are you qualifying it to make sure that, it's an area that so maybe from the map, it's interested you. You're like, this looks interesting, right? And then what's your next step after that? I mean, are you just diving in spring scouting? What type of sign do you need to see that tells you that, yeah, this is a spot I do need to come back in September and recheck?
You know, I'm kind of struggling with that one. I'll tell you how I'm doing it this year, or how I'm going to attempt to go about this season here. So this is exactly what I'm running into. It's a brand new property. I stepped on it, this spring for the first time. Honestly, if I'm just like hitting on sign or like what I need to see there, it's not really like what you would expect. Like the amount of like say big rubs or big scrapes are basically non-existent there. So what I'm doing is that there's crops on this property. So I was like, all right, I already have it in my head that, I'm going to be in here in, September. That's what I'm shooting for anyways.
Right.
So for this whole property, I kind of sectioned it off into quadrants, and I scouted the entire thing, and anything of interest I marked on a map. So what I did next is this summer, starting June the 15th, I started going out there and summer glassing. And I laid that over what I already knew in the springtime, because, there's a certain kind of deer that I'm looking for. And it's like, you can look at a rub and it's like, to me, it's like, well, I can't tell if this deer is, 120-inch 7-year-old 6-pointer or, something that's, 170 inches.
Right.
You don't know. So I need to go out there and I need to see those kind of things. So what I've been doing is I'm going out there in the summertime, now, well, not right now, I'm out west, but, so I'm going out there now. I'm seeing exactly what kind of animals are there, and in general, what area of this property they're in. And I've done that spring scouting. So I think I have a general idea of where they're going to be, but so now I know that the kind of animal that I want is there, or in this case is actually a specific animal I want is there.
Right.
And now whenever September 15th hits, I'm going to go in there and I'm still going to do my normal thing. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to scout. I'm going to find where he is, and I'm going to get after him.
Right. And so it sounds like when you kind of build those quadrants, right? Like you're kind of identifying the places, obviously, where you're seeing, sign that looks like could be huntable sign, right?
Right.
And then when you're doing your glassing, when you say you overlay that with, those quadrants, it sounds like you're looking at it from the perspective of, when I glass this deer, where does he come out into this bean field in relationship to any one of these quadrants? And what, based on my scouting, what do I think the travel corridors might be to and or from? So what quadrant is he actually more likely, using than maybe the other ones? Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of. Let's see. So
is it a little bit more mad scientist than that? I imagine you with like a beautiful mind, like with like pins on a board and like yarn everywhere.
No, it's not quite like that. So I'll back up again to last summer. So last summer I did that. So I found a deer, and I found him like July the 6th or something like that. And I watched this deer religiously for like months, or at least a good solid, month and a half. I was like, all right, I've done my spring scouting here. He's coming out of this, this corner of this field. Here we are, July the 15th, and I've got him on a pattern. And then what I figured out what happened is he just straight up and just left.
Right.
So. So I'm not trying to do that now. That information, it can be relevant come September 15th, but it isn't necessarily.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking for is looking for just a proof of life. I just need to know that he's there.
Right.
And if he is in that quadrant that I'm thinking, I'm thinking I know about where I need to start, come season. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, it does, because like you're kind of saying, hey, if I'm gonna put it in layman's terms for myself, if he's a homebody, I got a real good beat on him.
Yes.
If he transitions, I at least know, I think, where he has laid down sign in the past, and I have at least a place from which to start to see if I can't relocate him.
Right.
Is that kind of
And yeah, and I guess I kind of get into this deer a little bit more. That the reason I say that, like, I think I know where he's going to be at. So in this one quadrant that I'm hunting, it's like 500 acres,
Mhm.
and between me and my buddies over the years, we have really learned that big mature whitetails, they love to bed in CRP,
Mhm.
early season grass.
Yeah.
So in this 500 acre quadrant, there is only one field in there that's CRP, and I am very confident that's where he's going to be. I might have a little information from a friend that bumped him up last year as well, so there's
Right.
that information too, which is very helpful.
Yeah.
But that's why I say it's like, I know where I'm going to start looking for them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you got to have, it's, you got to have multiple pieces of the puzzle, and that's kind of what you've gathered. You know what I mean? Because let's see, in lieu of being able to use trail cameras, because right, a buddy bumping him out of a CRP patch somewhere is just as good as having a trail camera somewhere that know that he's been here on these dates or whatever the case is. Yeah, man. Yeah. See, so when I hunted Missouri, I hunted a lot of river bottom, some hill country.
Yep.
And the last place I went was just like this swampy, gnarly kind of area that was kind of surrounded by CRP. And that place was dynamite. Like the other two was like hit or miss. That place was slamming. And then I went to Kansas this past year, and I mean, there's I don't know, man. Big bucks like where there aren't trees. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like if there's not a tree in sight, man, there's a chance that a really good deer is going to be living.
Yeah, no, I've had somebody say the exact same thing, and I've seen it too.
Yeah, yeah. Man, I'm curious, when do you because a lot of people will stop their summer scouting. Like, a lot of people don't summer scout at all. And I'm slightly guilty of that. It's like I'll do my trail camera stuff, and I'll kind of maybe finish up like the last bit of scouting of things I wanted to do, or maybe even places that I've never hunted before that I may or may not even hunt it this year, but I'm going to walk through it, and if it's late and I bump some deer around, like, I'm not too worried about it because I really wasn't intending to hunt it anyway.
Right.
Where do you kind of stand on that? Because it sounds like you still like to kind of get in there and mix it up into the summer in terms of just kind of, doing some summer scouting. So do you have like a cutoff point where you're like, look, if I know a deer is around, I'm not going in past this date?
Not really. As long as if I can go and scout it without that deer knowing that I'm there. So if I can like long distance glass it, then basically, no bars, no holding back on, going to watch that deer. If it is, somewhere where it's like I have to bump, this field, and this field just to get back to that field, and I already know that it's soybeans, and all I'm doing is hurting, the rest of the area by just going to try to scout it, then I'm probably not going to go there as much. As far as like time of the year, I mean, I would say, for most guys, looking at, summer deer, your most relevant information is probably going to be anywhere, from August 1st, up until September the 15th.
Right.
I'll go and start scouting. Well, I say scouting. It's more like just looking at deer.
Right.
Just because that's what I enjoy doing. But like from June the 15th to August the 15th, there's some stake that you can put into what you see, but I definitely wouldn't. I wouldn't bet the farm on it.
Right, right. Well, I mean, there's still value in, I like what I'm like, kind of what you're saying, because like I just like to look at deer too. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like even whenever I have does approach me when I'm in a tree, it's like I still get excited. I just like to watch deer.
Yeah.
And the long range glassing that you're kind of doing, I've talked to Tony Peterson about this in the past, and like he loves that kind of stuff because it's low impact, and if nothing else, so even if the information is not relevant to try to help you kill a particular deer per se, the observation of how they interact and just deer behavior in general and learning kind of their mannerisms and stuff like that, I think is. I mean, how many times do you see a deer in a tree? It's say like 3 years ago when you had, or a handful of years ago when you had your recurve and you were, screwing up all the stuff on the ground and stuff. It's like, how much did you pick up just from watching deer behavior, knowing when one's on edge versus when one is calm, when one's knows there's something's up, when one just has not a clue. You start to kind of see those little things that kind of help you figure out, when do I move? When do I draw? When do I move around the tree? Like all those small little things, like they don't just happen automatically. Those are things you have to learn over time.
Right, for sure. Dang it, I forgot. You said something right before that, and I was going to comment on it. What was it again?
I was saying just like, the trials and tribulations you had whenever you were hunting with the recurve and just picking up on deer mannerisms and understanding when they're calm and, things of that nature that help you, figure out when to pick your bow up, when to shoot, when to draw, to know when you have a calm deer to kind of to execute the shot versus, there's a lot of steps that happen between seed deer and kill deer, and they don't all just happen naturally, as I guess is what I was saying.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. I guess that's all I had to say there. Is you hit that one right on the head.
Right. Nice. I'm not right very often, man. So I'm gonna put that one in the book. You know what I mean? So, do you typically chase a single deer, or are you more? I'm just trying to find a good deer in the area, and then I'm gonna go after whatever deer I find that are good. And so, one year it might be, I'm going after a single deer because that's the only deer that tickles my fancy this year. Or it might be, I've got 3 or 4 deer that I found that are really, really good that I'll kill any one of the 3 or 4 that if I see them.
Right. So I'm trying out the whole hunting a single deer thing. This is, I've killed some deer before in the past, like, specific deer in the past, but it's been like, I see them like, Friday and then I kill them Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't ever been a time where I'm like, I see a deer, in the summer and I go in and hunt them, in the fall and I kill them. That's never happened. That's what I'm trying to do.
Right.
So like last year, really any deer that's 140 plus, it trips my trigger,
right.
And I haven't killed a whole bunch of those kind of deer. So like, and the reason I kind of settled in on 140 is because I want to kill like a 4.5, year old buck or older.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, a average buck, here in Missouri, whenever they get to 4.5 years old, they're probably going to be 140, somewhere around that range. And that's the kind of deer that I like to kill.
Yeah.
So like in my Illinois hunt last year, late season, like I'm going around, I'm scouting, cornfields and soybean fields, on the edges, and I'm looking for a big track, something that, is telling me that there's a 4-year-old plus deer in this area. Beyond that, 4-year-old, type deer, what they have on top of their head, that's as of right now a little less important to me. The buck that I did end up shooting, he was broke up pretty bad, but hey, first out of state deer, 4-year-old, public land buck in January, I'll take that.
Yeah, all day, dude. Yeah, I mean, I think when I go out of state, Pennsylvania for me, I'm usually 3.5 or older. Just it can be sometimes difficult to find some 4.5-year-olds around here just with the pressure and stuff. At least in this part of the state, I shouldn't say this part of the state. Locally, to me, I guess is what I'm referring to. And usually, I can find 1, maybe 2 that are 3.5, 4.5 years old. Now, when I go to the northern part of the state, it kind of goes up to like 4.5 because it's just a lot more land up there. It's a lot more sparsely populated. So, and there are plenty of hidey holes for deer to find that they can get some age on them. Now, don't get me wrong. I see a good 3.5-year-old up there and has all the things that get me excited. He's going to get carbon flung at him. Yeah, I don't want to. I'm not going to tell any tales out of school here. But I think that agreed. When I've hunted Iowa or Missouri or Kansas, it's like, yeah, if you're targeting 4-year-old deer, it's going to be a good buck in those states. Yeah. You know what I mean? For sure. So I'm curious, man, and then I want to jump into the hunts that you had last year. But the last kind of question on your approach is when you've mentioned glassing a couple times, and so I'm just curious because I think whenever I think of glassing, or I think when a lot of people think of glass, they think kind of like from the truck, low impact kind of glassing. Like, is that a lot of what you're doing, or are you having to kind of get in environment, if you will, or maybe even sometimes in a tree, get a little height so you can see what? So what type of glassing are you doing? Is it all truck glassing, or are you having to mix it up a little bit?
I mean, it's all the above. Like, I mean, I'm kind of lazy, so if I can glass them from the truck, I'm going to.
Yeah, exactly.
But if there's a couple different places that I'm thinking of, off the top of my head. If you try to glass it from the truck, then you're not getting any information. So I'll do whatever whatever is necessary, to get the information that I'm looking for. Right. Elevation's always going to help with I say always, most of the time, elevation's going to help. Right. Whether that be standing on top of your truck, or whether that be, getting, way up in a tree, up on a hill or something. Whatever you need to do to get that information.
Right. Yeah. Without, as you mentioned earlier, it's like if you got to bump through a bunch of stuff and damage stuff to get there, it may not be worth it. So it's always that balance of getting the intel you need without, with leaving as little impact as you possibly can, I guess.
Right. And I mean, like some of those areas, like you absolutely, like you have to get in there, you have to walk in order to see what you need to see. A lot of these areas that I hunt, there is, designated, walking trails or service roads or something. So if there's somewhere that I have to get into, and I know I'm going to be, disturbing deer, then I'm going to choose to leave my scent somewhere where they are, naturally, used to human odor being. Right. And that's where the deer are going to tolerate my scent being. Right. I'm not really one to, like, this time of year, like, I'm not going to go out on a big, boots on the ground, scouting session. Right. That's the kind of stuff I do in the springtime.
Right. Same here, man. Like my motto is there's a place or two that I can glass, and I like to do it. One of the places I can't even hunt, to your point, I just like to go watch deer. So sometimes Friday after work, I'll take, and it's not far from my house, so I can take like a beer or two and sit on the bed of my truck with a spotting scope and just sit and watch deer. It's kind of fun on a Friday night. There is one spot that I am able to hunt close to that I will glass as well. But I'm kind of like you, man. Most of my stuff is done in winter and spring. Because if I'm being honest, I hate walking through the woods in the summer. Like the cobwebs all over my face. It's hot. It's disgusting. It's like if I can stay out, I do. Go ahead.
I mean, it's like what. You have to think like what are you gaining by walking through the woods at this time of year? If you're going in and you're checking, some white oak trees or something to see if they have acorns on them, sure, you're going to need to do that. Yeah. I would rather do that September 15th, but that's just me.
Right. Yeah. So I will do that whenever I check trail cameras. I kind of do a twofer. I kind of take a route through the areas where I'm like, all right, these are some areas that I know that I'm going to want to check out. Either it's historically I've found sign there or I've had encounters or whatever the case is. I just kind of go see what the acorn crop is looking like. You know what I mean? Take my binos and peep them and know, what's going to drop and what's not going to drop. And then, and then you just wait and see, if you get a big windstorm early or something like that that drops them early, or if they're going to hold on to whenever they typically have dropped in the past, you know, and then you just play the waiting game at that point.
Right.
Before we move into your hunts, man, I forgot to ask you this earlier, and it just dawned on me as we were kind of talking about this. So when you go, like, what does a Jace setup look like in a tree? Like, what are you kind of looking for your kind of, you know, like your kill spot, if you will, right? It's like, so you find an area that say where this deer is that you're looking for this year, and you're like, you know, let's say it's not CRP, just for the sake of this kind of example, and you find a chunk of timber where you're like, yeah, man, he's spending time in here, and I know it. And now, you know, anyone who's done this for any length of time, it's like, you know, it's not just finding the spot, it's finding the spot within the spot that you're going to have that, you know, 15-yard encounter, you know, or closer, right? How are you identifying what that spot is? You know, I'll just give you an example. For me, I'm a big, like, I like hunting in and around scrapes. That's kind of like one of the things I prioritize. So a lot of my setups will be in and around scrapes. Doesn't mean I won't hunt a rub line or hunt right, or, you know, outside of a bed or whatever, but that's usually like kind of my go-to, because I know how to hunt it, and I'm effective at it, right? So I'm just curious with you, like, what does a Jace kind of kill spot look like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, the first thing that I'm thinking of in there is where can I get close? And, you know, that is like, what in this area, like, of any like focal points of where I'm trying to target, where this deer, where, you know, maybe moving through or entering, exiting, you know, hitting a scrape or whatever, you know, what is that I'm trying to, you know, zero in on. The second thing is going to be, you know, the wind. Whenever I go into somewhere, it's like, okay, what wind can I hunt this on? You know, what wind can I not? From there, it's going to be, okay, like, what's my focal point of what I'm going to be, you know, targeting? Is it going to be a scrape? Is it going to be a trail? You know, is it an acorn tree? You know, whatever it is. From there, and after I've determined what kind of wind I can get away with in there, I am going to seek out a tree and, you know, I can make quite a few trees, you know, work for this, but I'm going to seek out a tree to where I can sit my stand in a position to where I am shooting this focal point, you know, from a seated position, ideally about, you know, 15 yards.
Right.
I don't like to get them out too far. You know, I like things, you know, up close and personal.
Yeah.
So I set up my tree stand, you know, and everything's, you know, off my left side. You know, I'm right-handed.
Yep.
So that way, whenever, you know, a deer does come in, you know, close and things are touchy, I don't have to stand up. All I have to do is grab my bow, which I don't know if many people use this. You know, I see a lot of guys, you know, they have a bow hanger up on the side of the tree, and, you know, they reach way up and around and grab their bow and then, you know, bring it down to them. I'm not quite like that. So on the old Lone Wolf Assault 2 stands, I have this bow holder in the middle of the stand, and I love that. I've modified it. I have a Custom Gear 1.0 now that I've modified to fit my Matthews, and I use that same thing.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So that's kind of a Jace setup. Very, very up close, very personal, very, very specific on what I am choosing to cover. Right. If I can cover like two things, I will, but, you know, from those recurve days, I really, really learned the importance of choosing, you know, one thing.
Yeah.
And if something comes through there, I got it.
Yeah.
But if I'm wrong,
yeah,
then, you know, it's bad. But that's how I go about things.
Right. No, and that's one of the things I think there's two of the hardest things I think for, you know, either younger or newer bow hunters, I think to figure out and get comfortable with is, one, kind of playing the wind, right? It's like, until you really understand how the wind and thermals kind of work together and what that's going to do where you're hunting, you almost, feel like you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And part of that too is learning that if it's a good deer and it's got some age on him, and is at some point you got to get comfortable giving that deer a portion of the wind. Like you got to be willing to be risky and have a hunt blown up, because that's really the only way you're gonna fool him. And then the second one is exactly what you said, is that if you're covering both things, you're likely not covering either in a lot of cases. You know what I mean? It's like, and you got to get good with just like trusting your intel and going, I know what this deer is supposed to do, and he's going to come through here, and just and know that and believe it. And if it doesn't, then it wasn't meant to be.
Right.
But so how high are you climbing? I'm always curious how much height guys want to get.
Anywhere from I carry 2 sticks with 2 cable aiders, so I'm averaging somewhere in between 10 and 12 feet.
Yeah.
That's where I'm hunting at.
Yeah. That's typically probably right around where I like to be. It depends on the tree. I use one stick to climb, so I can get up to, I have 30-foot rappel ropes. So I can get up to 30 foot if I need to, but a lot of times I find myself covering, like getting right about to that 10 to 12 foot mark too. I usually just try to get to like first cover.
Yeah.
Is what I want to get to. Unless I'm on like a ridge side or something like that, and I want to get up above like the deer sight line and stuff like that, then I need to cut, get higher. But by and large, I feel good at that 10 to 12 mark too. I feel like it's a sweet spot for getting to first cover, and it doesn't make the shot angle so shitty either.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've hunted a little bit at 20 feet, and man, I got picked off a bunch hunting up at 20 feet.
Really?
That was just me personally. It's like there's this like dead zone in like a deer's vision, and I mean, I can explain that a little bit if you want me to.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're just, let's say there's just a flat woods, and all the trees are bare, they're all like 30, 40, 50 feet, trees, whatever. If you're just looking straight out, there's going to be quite a bit of skyline that you could see just in the 6 to 8 feet above the forest floor. And then if you look up in the air, then you see more daylight behind the trees, as you're looking up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But
if you're looking right in between those two zones, you're looking into the trees and into the tops of the other trees that are behind it until you get to a certain range, which is really, really close, in which you have to actually look up in order to get a skyline on something that's around that 12 to 12 foot mark, let's call it.
Right. Wow.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's interesting. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so I personally haven't experienced deer looking up in trees and trying to find hunters, but man, like I said, whenever I feel like whenever I'm up at 20 feet, I feel like I'm just out there in midair, just kind of like a sitting duck, just skyline, from every angle on rather flat ground. That changes, like you said, you get into hill country, you definitely don't want to be on that same, line of elevation, with those deer. You want to be above that.
Right. Yeah.
But not that.
Yeah. That's interesting, man. I feel like I've talked to, Cody about that. I almost feel like he's mentioned something like that in the past too. Cause I know,
he
has he? Cause I know he likes to hunt low. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he just, he prefers to hunt, 6 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, whatever the case is. And I feel like he and I chatted about, I can't remember if we talked about it on a podcast or if it was just one day at a trade show somewhere we were talking about it, but I probably subconsciously picked it up from talking to him, to be quite honest, and started implementing it. But, man, so I've teased it a couple times now, this 3 tag year that you had. We're going to just go ahead and jump into it here. So tell me, what was it? It was Missouri, Illinois, and was it to Missouri, or what were the states again?
two Missouri, and then one in Illinois.
Okay.
So it was one on September the 22nd, one in one on November the 12th, which was Missouri's opening day rifle season. I shot that one with a bow. It was the first time I've ever taken the bow out during rifle season.
Oh wow, nice.
That was pretty cool.
That's a feat in itself, there, dude.
Yeah, that was pretty neat. I've never quite had the gall to try that one out, because I just always had that fear. It's like, gosh damn it, right. I know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
There's going to be one just out of range.
Exactly.
But then the third one was January the 3rd, I believe.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that first one, let's talk what first one. What was the date on that one again?
September the 22nd.
Okay, so that's pretty. What time? When did your season come in?
The 15th.
The 15th. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was that? Walk me through that hunt. So is this a deer that you knew of, found, or was it a deer that you just kind of located as you were hunting and scouting in that early part of the year?
It was a deer that he was in the area. So that big deer I was talking about that I watched for, months on end, and then he vanished on me.
Mm-hmm.
I will say one good thing you can get out of just watching an area is, even though the particular deer in that area, they may, move off and, new ones may come in, they'll use that area in, pretty similar ways.
Right.
So you can still gain information about that area, even though it's not about that deer.
Right.
So there was, after that big one had left, there was two in here that I knew that I would shoot. One was like a high 130s 8-pointer, and then this deer that I ended up shooting. Mm-hmm. So I knew they were in this area, and I was like, all right, I've spent a whole bunch of time here. I know what the deer in this area are doing in general, and this is where I'm gonna hunt. So the opener gets here, and I pull up to that spot, to this little area, and it's not very big. It's maybe a 20 or 30 acre area. And at one of the main parking lots, there's a guy already sitting there at 2:00 in the morning. He's sleeping. So I pull up, and my headlights shine his truck, and he, jumps out of his truck and, starts to get ready. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna let this guy, have it. I don't want to really, mess up his hunt, and, I'll come back here in a couple days. And that's something I've seen consistent as well. If, like, early season, there's going to be quite a few hunters out there, for the first couple days of season. Guys are taking off, vacation. They're hitting their openers. Everybody's fired up.
Yep.
But after a couple days, all that pressure, dies off. So what my plan was kind of here was, I was going to go hunt some other stuff that I was semi-familiar with, and just kind of let things cool down. And whenever this guy in there, because he was hunting it in a complete wrong way, and I knew it was good. I knew it was going to move these deer. I just didn't know where.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, after this guy moves out, I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to locate, where these, bucks have moved to. So a couple days go by. I had a family emergency that, I had to be away for a couple days, and I came back, and I had the whole thing myself. So looking at kind of the weather for the next, couple days, is I saw I had 2 south winds and then 2 north winds. And so I was like, all right, so there's 2 ends of this area that I can get up in a tree and glass from. I was like, all right, so these 2 south winds is I'm going to start on the, west end here for this south wind. Tomorrow night, I'm going to go to the other end and watch that on a south. And then when the wind changes north, I'm going to go back to where I started on north, and then go to the other spot on north. And that was kind of my plan. I don't know if that would have worked, but
it sounded good to me, man. I was following.
Um, so the first night, observation sit, saw nothing. So I'm like, okay, moving on with the plan. Go to the other end, on a south wind, and I see this, this 8-pointer that's in there. And, again, they're in a place where there's like basically no trees and it's just CRP, kind of what you were talking about.
Right.
Big bucks being like where there's no trees or really, really small ones.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. I saw that buck in the area, but I really didn't have a good idea of where exactly I needed to be in order to make an aggressive move. So the next night we have a north wind, and just because of how the spot laid out, a north wind allowed me to cut the distance by about 300 yards and get about 100 to 150 yards away from these deer, in this bedding area without me disturbing them.
Right.
And so that night I watched that 8-pointer and a couple other bucks. There was a couple small trees right up against this CRP patch, and they were feeding on something right along the edge of it. And I'm like, all right, I got you now. Because I had the same wind, or I had another north wind the next night. So the next night I get off work and I charge in there, and sorry, not to make this story kind of short, but I get in there and I get in this really small tree. I'm about 10 feet up off the ground, and the evening's progressing and I don't see anything, nothing. And then about 15 minutes before dark, I look up, and on the downwind side of like a big bush, I watch this buck that I end up shooting. He stands up, him and another little buck, about 80 or so yards away from me. And so I can only really see this deer's head and like the top of his antlers. And I'm like, man, I bet they're going to try to downwind this tree line, and then they'll probably come right up it and feed in the same spot that, the other bucks were the night before.
Right.
And I'm watching them, they're hooking around, and all I can see is the little buck at that point. I don't see the one I end up shooting anymore. And I see the little one. He's like, 25 yards off at the end of this little tree line. And then he enters the tree line that I'm in, and I can hear something walking. I'm like, oh, it's that buck. And I look up and I'm like, oh crap, it's that deer. And he's at 20 yards. And so my whole plan of I was set up in the same way that I do. I'm going to shoot off my left side, to where I don't have to stand up, I don't have to do anything, in order to get a shot off on this deer. That plan went completely out the window because he was coming a lot closer to my tree. He was going to end up at about 3 steps off my right side.
Oh, geez.
So this deer's at 20 yards coming in, and he's stopping a little bit. He rubs a couple trees on his way in. And I guess one thing I always do whenever I get up in the tree is, even though I'm planning on taking, the shot that I'm, setting up for, I will look 360 degrees around the tree and identify all of the shooting lanes that I have. And I'll even take an extra step, and I'll even put my glass on the, my binoculars on those spots, just to make sure they are actually clear, because there's sometimes that there's a branch in, one of those shooting lanes that you would have, otherwise not seen.
Yeah.
And so that happened with this one. Is I knew from the trail he was on, which is a really faint trail, that he was, going to be, coming in really, really close. And I always carry milkweed with me. And I had a really good idea of like, where do I need to shoot this deer before he gets my scent.
Mm-hmm.
And the shooting lane that left me for that opportunity was not that great. So while this deer is at 20 yards, I stand up, I get turned, he's coming in, and at 5 yards, I shoot, and I'm trying to self-film this whole thing, and my camera arm goes swinging off to the side, and I'm shooting a lighted knock, and I just see the knock just like bury into his guts.
Oh man!
And he goes running past me, and to make a long story short, there he had only gone like 40 yards, but I waited till the next morning,
right?
To go get him. So nice. That's how that September hunt went.
Nice. So did you get it on film?
I got the deer coming in, and then just as he's walking off of the screen, all you see is a flash of green and a sound, and then that's it. I destroyed my camera.
And you destroyed your camera.
Yeah, I just absolutely destroyed it. First time I've ever tried self-filming, and that's how that went.
Yeah. No, I'm familiar with that's usually how all mine go when I self-film. It cost me a good buck in Iowa, which I never took it on another hunt during that trip.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah. All right, so that was early September, or late September, early season. So
yeah.
What was that? That was an 8-point, you said?
That was a typical 7x4.
7x4. Okay.
Yeah, 7x4. So he was the second deer, and I'd only ever seen that deer twice.
Oh yeah, I saw pictures of that deer. That was a hammer, dude.
Yeah, that was a nice deer. So that was that one.
Nice. And so then the next one was in November, you said?
Yes.
And that was with a bow during your gun season.
Yes. So let's see. So this hunt, actually it kind of starts in like 2012 whenever I was hunting another deer in there. So what I had found out from this deer that I was hunting there in 2012 was there's a scrape on top of a certain ridge, and whenever that scrape is opened up around November the 10th, that means that there is to me, this is what this means. That means that there's a buck that's moved in there that is using that as his area to bring does to breed them. So let's see, it was like November. It was like a couple days before rifle season. My dad and my brother in there, they're like, "Hey, this scrape's opened up," and I'm like, awesome. How do I, how am I going to hunt this deer, with a bow? So there's two options in my head. It's either A, he's with a doe, or B, he's not with a doe. And there's usually how we hunt this is the bedding area is down in this thick, nasty draw, and we get them like coming up out of it or just like skirting the edge of it, like way down low. Mm-hmm. And in hill country, whenever you're trying to get deer close, hunting low is not the greatest idea for me.
Yeah.
There's certain spots that you can figure out, but so I was like, okay, I know that if he's with a doe, we've seen that buck I was hunting in 2012. He took this one route that is going perpendicular on this ridge about 100 yards down from this scrape. He's crossing from one holler going into where we usually hunt. We saw him do that a couple times. Mm-hmm. And I've seen bucks in that same area that if they don't have a doe and they're cruising, they will go and cruise parallel with this ridge, parallel or just right on top of the ridge. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, all right, I have a bow, and like I was saying earlier, I try to choose something that's very, very specific, for me to hone in on. And so I'm like, okay, so in this particular instance, I can actually cover two of these situations that are going to happen. And I was thinking about this a couple days before, season started, whenever, my family told me about that sign. And I was like, man, but I need a northwest wind in order for me to really make that setup work. And I looked on the Weather Channel, and lo and behold, it was a northwest wind.
How
And I
often
was
does that?
like,
How often does that happen when you get the actual wind
never,
that you need? Yeah, I know, right?
never. So I was like, I was like, oh, he's done. Like I'm gonna get him. Whether he has a doe or whether he doesn't have a doe, I'm gonna get him either cruising or crossing somewhere, or crossing this ridge, with this doe.
Hmm.
That's just what I had in my head. And the important thing was I really really believed in that. I didn't second guess myself, going in there.
Hmm.
But I didn't have the exact spot, or like the exact tree picked out in my head that I wanted to hunt, because I've never hunted that area in that way before. I've never hunted it with a bow.
Right.
And so I kind of had to, rethink things. So I have all that information and what I think's gonna happen. And so opening morning rifle season, it comes up, and this is something I do. I wouldn't suggest this for everybody, but I can get up in a tree really, really quickly.
Hmm.
Mostly because I'm just using two sticks.
Right.
But I've been on a lot of morning hunts where I will go in there in the dark. I will try to pick out a tree in the dark, and then daylight comes around and I'm not in the spot that I am supposed to be in. And
Yeah.
then I'm left with a tough situation there. It's like, okay, do I take this time, this very, very, important time, first thing in the morning,
Yep.
to get down and go look for the tree I need to be up, that I need to be in, and then climb up it? Or do I just stick it out here? I hate being in that situation.
It's the worst, man, because it's like you feel like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? Because
You are.
you're like, man, if I get down, I might make noise. I'm gonna lay down more ground. I'm gonna lay down more ground scent. There's always the
Right.
possibility that deer are on their way in and I spook them
Yep.
as they're coming in. And then the opposite side of that is as I stay in this tree and I am 10 yards out of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And I absolutely hate being, putting myself in that situation. Ideally, you already have, like, a tree set up. It's like, okay, this is the tree. I've hunted it before. Everything's, good to go. I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And then you can slide in before daylight and be fine. But for when I don't know exactly what tree I'm going to be in, I waited around the general zone that I knew I wanted to be in. I waited on daylight so that I could actually see what the hell was going on in there.
Dude, 100%, man. Like there's I'll hunt, areas, especially when I'm out of state, that I may never have even been able to scout before, just because, like, for example, like Iowa, the area that I was hunting in Iowa, I went out and did some shed hunting, but the place I ended up hunting wasn't even the place that I was shed hunting. So I had no clue of of anything in there. And every day was just basically show up, scout, find sign, hunt it. That was, every day went rinse, repeat. And, I took a page out of John Eberhardt's book where it's like on those days where I was just kind of freestyle hunting or freelance hunting, like I would I would go even a step further. I wouldn't even walk into the timber until I started having just a little bit of gray light so I could see. So I wasn't blowing deer completely out. And I agree with you, man. And I think there's some value in just kind of getting to your spot and taking it in a little bit too. It's something that I've kind of picked up from Jake Bush. I know he's big on that, where he'll walk into a spot, even if he's walking in for an evening hunt and he can see, he'll just stop and listen and wait for like 20 minutes before he even climbs to listen, to just pay attention to what's going on in the woods before he makes his decision.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what that's exactly what I did here. So daylight, came around, and I'm looking up in the trees, and I'm like, it's just barely gray light. I'm like, all right, that tree right there, that's the one I need to get in. So I go up to it. I climb it, get all my stuff set up, which like I said is, pretty quick. If it took me like a half an hour to get a tree stand set up, I probably wouldn't try this.
Right.
I've had some close calls, believe you me, doing this, but I get up in my tree and I get everything set up. I sit down in my tree stand and I'm just, wearing a traditional, tree stand harness. And my tether's a little too tight. So I sit down, it's a little too tight. I reach up to, slide my, my tether down or whatever you want to call it, just a little bit. And I literally reach up and I hear this buck grunt on the exact path that I'm expecting him to come if he does have a doe. And I look and I see a doe. And I see this buck right behind her. And I'm like, oh my God. And he brings that doe right up to me. And, there's this shooting lane that I had looked at, before this. I'd already glassed it. And this doe walks through the shooting lane at 27 yards. I range the doe. And I guess that's also something that I also do. If I think it's a step over 25, I'm getting a range on it.
Yeah.
And I really don't, I don't like guesswork in anything that I do.
Yeah.
So the doe walks through at 27 and then the buck walks through just a couple steps, further away than what she did. And he just stops on his own perfectly in the middle of that shooting lane. I put my 30-yard pin on him and rip him, and he goes 40 yards and he's down. And within the first 10 minutes of, daylight, I have a buck on the ground.
Dude, that's awesome. What was he?
He was a 137.5-inch 9-pointer.
Nice. And what was the first one?
138.
138. Can't beat that, dude. So then, as if that wasn't good enough, someone says, hey, you can't kill a deer in late season on public in Illinois, and you say, hold my beer.
Well, actually that buck is my first buck I've ever killed with my bow in November.
Oh, really?
Yeah, first one ever.
Wow.
I am not that good of a November hunter. I like things that, on pattern, things I can track, things I can measure.
You like to you like to kind of be able to have the control, like, what's going on.
I like to have control. And even though I might have some control in November during the rut, it honestly just kind of breaks my brain because there's always the factor of, oh, well, he might be 10 miles this way tomorrow.
Right. But however, I just did a podcast with the guys from MSU Deer Lab where they were looking at bucks bedding, right?
Yeah.
October versus November, and they're actually more consistent in November.
Really?
Yeah. And it blew my mind. Like, he said a lot of things in the course of that podcast that kind of flies in the face of the conventional wisdom that we hold as hunters about bucks and their bedding habits.
Right.
The interesting thing is they're doing some additional studies because this was kind of like data they already had that they just kind of went through and looked for the trends. And so now with that, they have a bunch of other questions they want to try to answer. So they're doing another study that should answer some of the finer detailed questions. But because that's kind of like I don't want to say misconception, but that's kind of the idea everybody has. This buck could be 2 miles away, and he very well could be.
Right.
But if you can find one, I guess it's maybe more appropriately to say if you can find one in November and around rut, the chances are he's probably going to be within that area for a period of time.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, that's going to be that piece of information is going to be really helpful for me in the future. Cause again, back to what we were talking about earlier about your buddy that just got to spend, a whole year out there, out, in the, watching animals and, seeing what they do.
Right.
A lot of years, I'm, come November, until, the lockdown phase, whatever Missouri's rifle season is, as far as my year goes, like November the 1st through November the 15th, that is the least amount of experience out in the woods that I have. Um,
Wow.
so, hearing something like that, that's great. That gives me a little more, hope for the future.
Nice. So now we're on to Illinois. So how did that all? I mean, was that a planned hunt, or was that more of like I filled 2 tags? Man, I'm going to go to another state.
That was the way it was 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, I tied into 2, pretty good deer in Missouri. And I'm like, man, I don't want to sit around, I want to go out of state. It's like, well, where's the closest, that's over the counter? It's like, well, Illinois. It's like, yeah, a tag's expensive, but it's another deer tag. So, so this was a planned thing, and I had some preconceived notions about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to find over there for late season based off of what I had seen the year before. And one thing that I did that I haven't done before is for 3.5 days, I did not get my bow out of my car. I didn't get my tree stand out of my car. I didn't do anything. I just went scouting. And I just scouted and scouted and scouted for 3.5 days until I found a buck's track on the edge of a soybean field. And this is actually the exact place where I ended off last year. I say last year, 2 years ago.
Right.
It was the exact area. So I had a decent idea of what the deer in this area are going to do. So what I did is after those 3.5 days scouting, I found that track, and I'm like, okay, there's a 4.5-year-old buck in this area. Now I'm going to start, honing in on this. So that first evening, I go in there, and I try not to have any preconceived notions, but I can't help. My brain just works that way. It's like, it's trying to come up with all these, conclusions of, where a deer is and, where they're going to come through.
Right.
Just my brain just kind of does that on its own. And there was a cedar patch in next to a pond. And I'm like, I bet you this buck is either in this patch right here, or he's in a patch like 200 yards back. And so I'm just going to go ahead and, send a hunt at this, cedar patch, with this pond around it, and we'll see what happens. So as I'm approaching this pond, I see 2 deer get up in that cedar tree patch, and they go running off. I got a little bit too close. Thankfully they were not target deer, but I'm like, okay. So I'm like, why did I try to make such an aggressive move so quickly without having, some really, real intimate, relevant information?
Right.
I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I'm like, I need to get, back to my own basics. So I'm looking at this area, and there's, from this other bedding area that I know of, there's 2 points that kind of go towards the food where I found this track. And it's maybe from the bedding area to the food, it's probably like 300 yards. And there's one point that a deer could come out of that bedding area and basically just go straight up it and basically make a beeline straight for the food. And the wind was in a way where the other point that was kind of, headed in that direction also, the other point was a little more downwind. And so I'm like, okay, if I'm trying to think like a buck, I'm going to try to, a mature deer, I'm going to try to win this area wide and, try to, use my nose to my advantage. And I'm like, all right, that's good. And I'm going to get in a spot to where I can see, for sure see this other point to where if I see something over there, they're not going to get my wind, but I'm going to have, a really good visual sighting of the exact trail that these deer are walking, and I can make an aggressive move the next night. Mm-hmm. So the tree I picked out is I made very much so for sure that where I was, that I could cover, on oncoming deer. I do the same thing. I set up, seated shot off my left side. I look at all my shooting lanes, and like I said, I'm up kind of high on the point where I can see this other one. So the night kind of goes on. I see, I don't know, probably like 15 does and 5 other bucks. They travel up this other point, just kind of like I had figured. And I'm like, all right, most of the deer are moving, that way, just kind of how I would think they would. And then about 30 minutes before dark, I'm glassing over, and out of this bedding area through the timber, I can see there's about a 130-inch 8-pointer. Mm-hmm. I'm like, hey, that's not too bad,
right?
And I see this deer. He kind of like looks off to his right, and he's kind of like stepping over, and into view comes this buck that I end up shooting. I know there's a lot of spoiler alerts here, but I see this buck, and I'm like, that's the deer I'm in here for. And I see this one good side. He's got a good, G4 on him. Looks like a 10-pointer. I'm thinking, mid, 140 plus. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that's a good deer. I'm like, sweet. This deer is going to walk up this other point, and he's going to walk the same trail all these other deer did, and I'm going to go kill him tomorrow night. I'm like, this deer's done. And I'm sitting there, and he starts walking that direction, and he turns around, and he goes like back towards the bedding area. And I'm like, what the heck is this all about? And I'm sitting there for a couple minutes, and I'm like, is he downwinding this whole area? And I look up, and he's 50 yards walking like right at me. I'm like, oh my God, this is happening. And after what had happened the year before in Illinois late season, man, I got worked over by these deer. And so this was a coming to be a pretty, special moment for me. So this deer's coming in, and I look down, and I see that he's busted, but I'm still like, I'm going to, go ahead and shoot this thing. Right. And this one worked out, perfectly the way I had laid it out. There's a trail coming by at 15 yards, and I had one about volleyball sized hole that I could shoot through before this deer got my wind. And he's come along the trail, and he looks up, and he checks me, but it kind of goes back to I know when to move and when not to. Right. And from where he was downhill of me, looking up at me, on top of this little point. I'm skylined, so right. If I would have been moving, he would have cracked me. His head goes behind a tree, and he walks at me for just a split second, and that was my opportunity to draw. I draw the bow, and I follow him. He walks down the trail, and his vitals get in that volleyball size hole, and I shoot him at 15 yards.
Nice. You gotta love it when a plan comes together, man.
Right.
That's awesome, dude. And it's a redemption story too, man. Especially because like you were back in that same kind of general area. You got worked by the deer the year before, right? Uh-huh. That's awesome, dude. And that's tough sledding, dude. Late season, like that's hard hunting. Like I don't know. Dude, I know what. Touchy. What's that?
I said the deer are really, really touchy during that time of year.
Touchy, and they don't move a whole lot, and they don't move far from wherever they're laying their head, and mm-hmm. they're skittish. And I know one guy who loves hunting late season, and he's good at it.
Yeah.
And that's the only dude I know who likes hunting the late season.
So late season is my favorite time of year.
Really?
So I was telling a buddy about this. It is, for me, if you just look at it from like I'm going to say I'm not that great at math, but from just a math standpoint. So if I can find an area where there's food and then, high stem count stuff,
Mm-hmm.
as far as like September the 15th through, throughout the end of the season, the deer are changing a whole lot throughout the whole year. But whenever you get to like December the 15th through January the 15th, in my opinion, that is the longest time frame that you have of deer that are doing something similar, which
Right.
is, a bed to food pattern.
Right.
And the food that time of year is really, really limited. So it doesn't, you don't have to be a rocket science, to find the food. I just, I look for, corn and soybeans. That's
Right.
what I look for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah, I totally hear you. I think I like late season just because there's nobody else out usually. That's one of the things I like about it. It's like I get a lot of places to myself because a lot of like the weekend warriors, if you will, are not coming out if the weather's cold or bad or whatever the case is. It's locating them, at least for me in Pennsylvania, with as much pressure as we have around here. Actually finding where they're at, and then the areas that I hunt not having a ton of food. So I'm still relying on food that's in the timber because there's not like a destination like field or anything like that. So it's like you're really kind of looking for like ferns where they're rooting and stuff like that, trying to root up, or trying to dig up like the roots of ferns and bulbs and, whatever browse that might be available and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
yeah. But a buddy of ours, like, Johnny Stewart, man, like he is a wizard at it. He likes late season. He prefers it,
Yep.
But dude, how big, what was that guy?
He would have been like 145 if he was not broke.
Right.
But he ended up going, I think it was 133.
Still, man, it's an awesome deer, man. That's 3 killer bucks in a season, dude. So this year, we up in the ante. We going 4. We Babe Ruthing it and calling our shot.
Yeah, we're going for 4. So the first thing I want in Missouri is I want to experience that hunting a specific deer and, going after them and killing that one.
Right.
That's something I want to experience. So that's my first goal. And then beyond that, I'm still going to, hold to my, I say 140 standard. They're all below 140, but, in that range.
Yeah.
That's going to be my standard for out of state. And I'm going to get at least 4.
There you go, man. I like it. When that happens, I'll hit you up or you hit me up. We'll do another follow-up sesh to do a $3 or a $4 podcast. That'll be the first $4 podcast we've ever had.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that's not true. I had Andy May on, and I think he killed 5 that one year.
Oh, well, come on. That's Andy May.
I know.
I'm this Missouri country boy trying to make it.
Right. Awesome, man. Hey, dude, I got one last question for you before I let you get going. It's one that I always like to end on. If you had to fill 3 public land tags and your life depended on it, and you could pick anybody to hunt those tags, living, dead, you know them, you don't know them, famous, not famous, whatever it is, who would be the 3 people you would count on to fill those tags to save your life?
Well, Annie Mae, 1.
Yeah.
Would it sound bad if I chose the second one as me?
Yeah, you can choose yourself if you want. But the way I always look at this is a basketball team and you're the coach. It's a 3-on-3 basketball team and you're the coach.
Gotcha. I'm gonna go Annie Mae, Andre D'Acquisto, and who would be the third one? You know what? Actually, the third one, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. You might have him on the podcast, but he's a close friend of mine, Hunter Hogan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Those are three fantastic. I think you're safe, man. I think you'll be all right. Hey, man, before I let you get out of here, dude, why don't you let people know where they can follow you, where they can find out more about you, and just kind of check in with what you got going on this season?
Sure. My name is Jace Allen, JACEALLEN. You can just find me on Facebook. I have an Instagram handle is Nature of the Beast. I know that's a real special one to me. But I have that season that we just talked about. There's going to be an episode on whitetail addictions coming out in the near future. So keep on the lookout for that, and we'll keep on doing the same thing this year. I run a lot of stories, especially during shed season, on my Instagram. I think it's pretty cool. Some people seem to enjoy it, so yeah, hit me up.
Awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. Good luck this upcoming season, and let's make sure we stay in touch.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate it, man.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.